right. So, I think we're ready. Let's get started. So first of all, thank you very much for showing up. I know you'd make it. Yes, we do have a few new vehicles, though that's a bit more of a work in progress, right? We'll see, right? It'll take a bit of time before we can get all of the modern vehicles filled out, and there's enough stuff to actually play around with. But for the moment, I think we're making headway. Guten Morgen, Marc. Ah, morgen ist moin. Morgen ist vielleicht ein bisschen übertrieben, aber vielleicht sitzt du ja woanders. Alright, so let me just have a quick look. What we have. Alright. Okay. Then. So, what is it going to be today? First of all, some news on the game and the demo specifically. A little bit of info on Kickstarter and vehicles on Kickstarter. And then the next one is going to be a really important big announcement for later in December. And then we'll go from there and just play a bit of vehicles in between and take it very chill, right? So, a few little Hangar updates. You might see that we updated the carousel a little bit, so it's a bit more distinctive each vehicle you have selected. There was some community feedback about the old version of the carousel having better contrast, so we introduced that back. Especially for the German vehicles, I think they pop a lot more with this. I guess with the Soviets it's similar, so maybe it's a little too dark at the moment, but we'll see where we go with that. And of course some new vehicles. We have two new ones, I think, in this iteration. We have a Panzer III F, which is basically a stubby nose, right? It's between the Panzer IIIe, which has the applique armor, and the 37mm gun, and the Panzer IIIM, which has the extra armor plus the side skirts and the long 5cm. This one doesn't get any reinforcement on the lower plate at the moment. It only gets these parts here. It may be adjusted a little bit. Technically you could argue it's a Panzer IIIH, but we'll just see where we go from there, and we'll have to do some testing and balancing and see how it plays. And the other one, sort of a preview at the moment, BMP-1. Yes, the missile launcher actually works. It's not completely fine-tuned the way I want it to, but it does go boom. You can also have a quick look inside the vehicle. All the interior here. Alright, then I think I can actually... Hey Noir, good evening. I should be able to showcase that. So we swap around the scene. Just go ahead and... do this. As we can see here, we have a completely new launcher for the game. Has a fresh new design. As you can see, it has some cool highlight effect in the background here, and you can do all the standard stuff like uninstall, repair, open the folder, and you'll also be able to actually switch between different versions of the game. Right now obviously there only is the offline version, but for the next playtest you will be able to access this directly through the new launcher, so everything in one. The new launcher is also compatible with Linux, so you don't need to manually download and get the files moved around by hand. The launcher does everything for you. Right now we don't have a dedicated Linux build yet, but once that is available, the launcher will also handle that, so you can just download, click and play. In the future, there's also going to be more features. So the launcher will, for instance, handle all of your logging in. So you can log in with your game account directly in the launcher and then move from there. So with all the different variants, where do you go? That's very simple, because the power difference between the Panzer IIIs is way too large, right? If there is no way that we could make one Panzer III that just changes around into 25 different configurations and stays at the same power level, right? That it sort of breaks the game. Either it'd be completely overpowered or it'd be completely terrible if it's not upgraded. And even right now you can see that we have a Panzer IIIA at rank 1, one at rank 2, and the 3E is, the 3F is currently not here, but it will sit at rank 3. And then we have the 3M at 4. So we have a spread of 4 ranks for the Panzer III series, and they do change significantly. So that's why. Hi Phobos. Right, then let me just go ahead and move my camera really quickly. Let's do this. I think it's a bit better, so we take up a bit less space. The Panzer IIIN, the 3N will make an appearance. I could probably build it if I just take a hacksaw and like saw off the F1 gun. I could probably do it. I'll have to think about that, because we have a lot of Panzer IIIs and 4s at the moment, right? And there's this little point in expanding this range of vehicles here at the moment, because we already have a lot. So we'd rather go ahead and focus on adding more other vehicles, right? Speaking of which, as you can see, if you haven't been around in a little bit, the game looks very different. We have a completely new Hangar user interface. This is also going to be available in the demo version 2. So if you head on over to Kickstarter, you downloaded the previous offline demo version. If you go there, you can download the new and updated offline demo build of the game. And this will have all of the updated user interface. It's going to have all of the updated vehicle physics. It will have a different selection of vehicles. You don't get the full selection that I have here in the developer build for obvious reasons, but there are probably a few new vehicles in there, and you know, go try them out, write feedback, and we'll just roll from there. Now, I think one other vehicle I failed to mention is this one. As you can see, it's untextured, so it's work in progress, right? But it's going to be one of the low-level or low-rank armored cars, which means, you know, basically a glass cannon, right? We have a T-26 turret, and the hull is made of cheese, right? It's absolutely terrible. There's basically no armor protection whatsoever. We have around like 10-12 mils effective. It's like 9mm nominal, as you can see here. So there is no armor protection whatsoever. Basically, like, whoever shoots this is going to deal damage all the time, consistently. Hi Biteless, no problem, you can just call me Bulldog. I can actually take this one for a quick spin, I think, before we get into the other vehicles. As you can see, the loading screen hasn't been updated yet. That one still has the old UI. And in the game we have a bit of a mixture, right? Like the team lists are still the old user interface. This is still the old user interface. These have been restyled, so we have a new hover matrix, and we also introduced this pip feature here, as you can see. The idea is to help new players at a glance figuring out sort of what does a projectile do. Of course, when you reduce info that much, it can't give a perfect picture. but it shows that high explosive, for instance, gets 1 pip in armor penetration, AP gets 2 pips in armor penetration, this one gets 3 in damage because it's an AP-HE round, and HE gets 4 pips in damage. So AP-HE has more penetration but less damage than HE. That's really the takeaway from here. Oh, and as for the BA6, you can see it moves, right? It's yeah, let's put it that way. It moves, right? But not much more. And this is really a misconception that a lot of people may have, that wheeled vehicles are incredibly fast. And granted, they usually are pretty fast in a straight line, or especially downhill if you let them accelerate enough with, you know, a lot of weight for a pretty small engine, like you could see here. But generally speaking, in a straight line, 50 kilometers an hour is not much faster than a normal tank would either, right? And we also can't turn incredibly quickly. We have a very large turning radius. What's that, like? I'd say around 50 meters in diameter, something like that. So you can't make crazy turns and evade shots. It just doesn't work because it's physics, right? So there's that. And of course the gun is the 45 from the T26, so it's a pretty good gun. We have around 60 pen, we have pretty good damage. Of course, when shooting an armored car, we can actually use the high explosive round for significantly more damage, as we can see here. Also see the spall inside the vehicle, it just eviscerates everything, right? You can see the nice killer animations here. We decided to add that simply to give players improved feedback, because of course you have the audio cues. Sometimes they can still be a little buggy, but when you get this pop-up, you can immediately see, alright, I dealt damage, right? There's no doubt about it. It's very immediate and very, I guess, direct. And of course for the kill, here we go, right? So much for that. Now, about announcements. I know you all want to playtest again, you want to play against normal players, and that will be the case very soon. Right now, this date is not set in stone, but we're currently looking at the next round of the public playtest on the 20th of December, so just before Christmas. We have a lot of really cool new changes planned on top of what you can see right now. I'm not going to spoil them too much. If you want to see them, you can head on over to Patreon. We're going to drop a few posts there, but I think it's going to help make things feel a bit more like Christmas, and we'll just, you know, roll with that. Well, I think the animation itself was not suggested by the community, but the request was from you guys, right? It was, hey, can we make it a bit more clear what actually happened when we pulled the trigger? Because the voice lines aren't quite where we want them to be at the moment, and sometimes it can be just too easy to overhear what actually happened with some guy mumbling in your ear, you know. So that's that. Yeah, Mark, 20th Dezember. We don't have an exact timeline for the duration of the test, or potentially maybe going for 1 or 2 days in a row. That's still to be decided, but 20th of December, that's the target time we're aiming for at the moment. With that said, I'm going to do something a little special this time, and that will be essentially looking at all of the Kickstarter vehicles and sort of working our way up the ranks and having a bit of a look at their gameplay, what makes them unique, what's special, and at the same time really sort of explore how does Steel Aces really function, how does balancing work, and what's different, right? Because I think a lot of people have played other tank games, right? We've played World of Tanks, we've played War Thunder, and they have their very, I guess, different approaches to how vehicles are handled, and some of them sort of ignore the lower rank vehicles, right? They're just kind of discarded. You grind through them in 1, 2, 3 games, and they're all kind of the same. They're all slow, they don't have armor, they have the same kind of pea shooter gun, all kind of the same damage, kind of the same penetration. There's nothing special about them really, and that is really quite far from how things are in real life. These vehicles do have a lot of design differences between them, and Steel Aces actually pays tribute to that by being more historically authentic and trying to make the vehicles feel like real life. So I just need to double check on one thing and then we'll get right into it. Just to make sure that I don't miss any of the vehicles. So we have the T1E3, we have the Maresal, we have the Panzer III K, we have the A34, we have the KV-122, the VK-4502P, and the T64BM. Right, so I would say let's get right into it. So, what's special about the T1E3? Well, the T1E3 is a rank 1 American light tank, and it's a bit of a specialist, right? It doesn't have a lot of armor. If you look at this, there's basically no protection. You might bounce some autocannons at range or at an angle, but essentially anything that's going to hit you is going to go through the armor. What it does have is firepower. It has a 37mm Browning. It's essentially a semi-automatic gun before the later 37s that we find on Stuart and so on. And it doesn't have the greatest amount of armor penetration, but it is semi-automatic, which means that you can trade 5-4-1 ideally, and that's how you should play this vehicle. It's decently quick, it's not super fast, it has a good amount of mobility, it can keep up with most other vehicles without a problem, but it's not going to win any races. And what you have to do as a player is find a position where you can sit in cover, reload, and preferably shoot at close to medium range and trade your shots basically. And just abuse that autoloader as much as possible. So let's try that out. Hey Kronos. Oh, Jerry, can you make sure to basically capture a few of the clips, please? Thank you. So, got a pretty standard matchup, it's just rank 1 vehicles, so we don't need to worry too much about armor penetration. We can punch through all of them without a problem. I want to find a piece of cover where we can sort of hide behind or play around, and then essentially sit and reload while we wait for... Let's turn around. As we can peek through those buildings here. Let's wait for our teammates to push up. Now we can go. Ouch. Ah, there's another gap in here. Let's see. Nevertheless, that was still a very good trade. Ah. To go around further. Oh. Oh. Maybe we should not ignore the second building. Oh. I have to be careful there. I didn't want to aim that one too much, because the T26, if he shoots me, that's going to hurt a lot. And as you can see there, you can angle a T26, especially at around 50 degrees. We're not going to have that much armor penetration anymore, right? There we go. think we can... Yes, and there we go. And now we can go around that side, I think. T-20... yeah, we're looking the other direction. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And now for the T-26, and that's that. Now, of course, this is the ideal scenario for it, right? You want close range engagements, you don't want to spend too much time aiming. As you can see, if I try to fire aimed, excuse me, that knocks down the DPM quite a bit, right? Because you have to, it shoots faster than it aims, so you have to wait in between shots. And especially at longer or medium ranges, you just cut your fire rate in half, if not more, to be honest. And of course, the penetration, if you look at this, it doesn't exactly have great ballistics. We lose a lot of pen at up to 500 meters. So basically, you really want to avoid fights at over like 250 meters, maybe 200. Otherwise, it's just not going to do very much, right? Hi, Thomas. Well, since I see a few people just coming in, I'm just going to repeat the announcements. So there's a new version of the demo that's available on Kickstarter. It's called Demo V2, so version 2 of the demo. It's going to be pretty similar to what I have here right now. It won't have all of the vehicles available because this is the developer build, but you can still enjoy all of the new UI, updates to vehicle physics, all of those things, and just, you know, experiment and try things out. And the other thing we have is our launcher version 2, which I'm going to showcase again very quickly. So this is how the new launcher looks. It has some, you know, stylish new user interface, a little bit of a red highlight here in the background. It will also handle logging into the account later down the track. Right now it doesn't have that yet, but you can just log in the launcher instead of manually in the game. It also handles multiple versions of the game. So if you want to switch between, let's say, the offline version and the live version for the playtest, or maybe also stuff like a super test later down the track once the game's released, all of that can be done through here. And of course the standard stuff like repairing, uninstalling and so on. Now what's special about this one is, first of all, it's completely made by us. So there are no hidden bugs in the verification or download logic. It should work much faster, much more consistently. And secondly, which is also very important for a lot of Linux users out there, it runs on Linux. Right now we don't have a game build for Linux yet. We will do it. It takes a little bit more work, but it's going to happen. So for the moment, at least you can download the files managed to the launcher and then run it through Proton or something. You don't have to manually download all the files and unzip them anymore with the new launcher. So, back to our vehicle showcases. I think you heard that, Thomas? Or do you need a German translation? Byteless, this shouldn't be the problem with the new launcher. Right, with the new launcher you can move the download wherever you want to. That is the old launcher, and I think it also has a lot to do with which privileges you have. So whether you're an administrator or not, and that can change things around a little bit. It was, I don't know, a little bit of a weirdness going on with the old launcher. But then again, we didn't build that one from scratch, right? We used a ready-made tool set to build it faster. And sometimes these are just the compromises you have to make, right? Right, so our next vehicle of the showcase, the M05 Maresal. So the Maresal is actually a Romanian prototype tank destroyer, and there's multiple versions of it. The one that we have in the game is the M05, which is the one that is armed with a Rishita anti-tank gun. The 75mm Rishita is actually a copy, or I guess a licensed copy of the German Pak 4D. However, the Romanians decided that it didn't have enough firepower, so they upgraded the muzzle velocity a little bit, which means that this one has around 25mm of extra penetration compared to the Panzer IV, and the APCR round goes through almost 200, which is completely beyond anything that you might actually need at this rank, to be honest. So what this vehicle has is it's a lot of firepower in a very, very small package. If you look at this, you might actually see that this looks very familiar. And if we look at another rank 5 vehicle, which is also brand new, you may actually see that looks familiar, right? The Maresal is in part built on Panzer III K parts, which includes part of the running gear, or at least the road wheels. And that's why you may recognize them. Aside from that, it's sort of cramped on the inside. There's not a huge amount of space, only 2 crew members. That's why the reload rate isn't super great, and you don't have a huge amount of ammo. And the armor is basically cheese. You have no armor protection, it's around 20mm. So how do you play this vehicle? Well, you abuse the fact that you have the best gun at that rank by far. You abuse the fact that you're very small and nimble, and you basically play it as a mobile sniper. It's quite quick, so you can relocate quite effectively. You just should definitely avoid getting shot at all. Hi Nut. Yes, of course the key bindings can be edited by players. So if you go, where is it? Here. You can adjust all your keybinds, right? There's a few more things that we will allow to customize. I think right now you can already customize a lot of the user interface in some of the colors down here. So you can, like for anyone with color blindness, you can colorize vehicles differently, right? Or the UI elements. And of course all of that will be upgraded as we move forward. That depends, Nick. So right now we actually are working on an upgrade system, so actually implementing it into the game. Sometimes there are trade-offs you have to make. Most of the time upgrades are just upgrades though, right? We don't have the World of Tanks thing where you can just stick a different gun into the same vehicle. For us, they generally are 2 separate vehicles, right? Because too many things change. So it's usually merited to just give it a different name. However, there obviously is the opportunity or the option that you can use a different version of the vehicle. So let's say the Panzer IV F2, this one has the 75, and the F1 currently, just as a placeholder, sits at rank 3, which has the short 75. Both of these vehicles will be folded in together, so this is going to be essentially the stock version of the F2. They're going to be the same slot in the tech tree, and you upgrade and get the bigger gun, right? Now, maybe this one has better reload or something, right? Because it has shorter rounds. I guess you could argue maybe there is a trade-off with you could get higher damage per minute with the smaller gun. It's more of a straight upgrade, I would argue. For other things like the Sturmgeschütz and the Sturmhaubitze, they may be more of a trade-off, where you can essentially decide between alpha or the fun factor for derping, and I guess better sustained damage and simply better consistency at range, right? So this may actually be one of those where you can switch around between 2 vehicles or install different guns. Not quite decided yet, right? We haven't fully built the tech trees that we want for launch. It's still work in progress. Lots of vehicles are being built. So expect a lot of that to change. This is really very much a playtest at the moment. So, then let's take the Maresal for a spin. Now, of course, it might be a bit harder to showcase this because the Maresal is essentially a dedicated sniper, and right now we have very small compact maps in the skirmish game mode, especially with the NPC agents. So it may be quite interesting to find a sniping spot here. We'll have to see. I have a lot of Panzer IIIs, they're quite dangerous because the 5cm shoots quite quick and they have a lot of damage and a decent amount of armor. For this gun it's not really relevant, so you can essentially point and click shoot anything you want with the Maresal. Same for the SMK, though we have to be careful. The SMK has not one but two guns and both of them will go through our armor consistently, so if we're not careful we will get torn to pieces. The vehicle really is tiny, right? So I think we might be able to sneak up here and use that as an impromptu position for the moment, but we'll have to see, because we have a pretty small team size. One of them managed to drop off the bridge. Boy, those SMGs. Alright, I think they're gonna be breaking through there in a second. One thing you have to be very careful of with the Maresal is you don't have a huge amount of gun elevation, because the vehicle is so small and so low, you can't actually elevate the gun very far. So we might have to play around a little here, and we have to drive further up the hill to actually depress the gun far enough. To go down a little bit further. Let's see if the SMK moves, then we can get some side shots.
We can now capture the enemy base.
It may take a bit of time. Oh, finally. Ah, that's maybe we can go through there. Maybe. Yes, there we go. That was a dumb idea, shooting down at the lower plate. Sometimes you know, we have the wrong instincts. Unfortunately, not that much to do here. And let's see if the Panzer III crosses. And he was quite low on HP, so we can just push him out, to be honest. Let's see. There we go. You always want to try to drop down at a bit of an angle. No, where is he? And expect that he's trying to go somewhere through there. Engine sound still playing. Oh, what? Is he actually driving? One second, we'll have to diagnose this. Huh. I'll have to write that down, that's a little bug, right? Well, I might have to check, maybe it is intentional, because for the offline version it does make sense to, you know, see the NPCs move on the map. In the game, of course, this doesn't work, right? But on the offline version it is apparently possible. There we go. There we go. Just roll back. I think we can actually ricochet. Oh, there we go. Of course, not for a flat one. Ah. go for the third front. There we go. As you can see there, like, it only took us one missed shot and we already took a lot of damage from that guy. The 5 centimeters shouldn't be underestimated. What are the armor upgrades, like array or additional armor plates? They could trade-offs, for example. Well, they are, right? So stuff simply because the upgrade system isn't in the game at the moment. Vehicles like the Panzer III are just there either in their standard configuration or in their fully upgraded configuration, right? This is the fully upgraded configuration. So the side skirts for the turret and the hull, as well as the additional track pads on the front, they all provide a little bit of extra protection, right? It's around 5 millimeters of steel equivalent, right? Which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you only have 30 millimeters of side armor, 5 millimeters extra is, you know, plus what, 1/6, that's like 17%. So that's actually a significant increase in protection. And same for these pieces here, the applique on the turret face, that is I think 20 millimeters. So those significantly improves the survivability of this vehicle, and you will get those as upgrades, right? It's just not in the game at the moment, but it will happen. For ERA, I think it's probably a bit more straightforward. You would generally want to have it if you have the option, but quite a few of them will be upgrades, right? Possible. The thing with the track sounds, it's sometimes it can be quite hard to get a good sample because you have the engine running. The engine is very loud. Quite often you have a lot of other people around, and we don't have a full audio recording team, right? Like if you want a proper audio recording setup, you're talking about a few $1,000 just to record the audio, and it's just a gigantic amount of work. So we grabbed a lot of samples for the moment, but some things, especially like tracks, are a bit harder to record, and they're also not finalized at the moment. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there will be a level 2 with Contact 1, though. I mean, it's more of a cosmetic thing, right? It's not gonna stop fin rounds, so all of the tank-on-tank threats are probably not gonna care too much about Contact 1. It doesn't offer a lot of protection for that, and then I guess against missiles, right? That will probably help a bit, but we'll see how that works, right? And which rank we place it on specifically. The thing is, there's not just one Leopard 2, there's a lot of them. There's a really big difference even in Leopard 2A4 versions, because they have different armor packages, right? And the upgrade can also be, I guess, internal. It doesn't look any different on the outside, but the composite packages in the cheeks were updated, so that could also be, or that will probably also be an upgrade that you can unlock in the game. An estimate for how many maps and vehicles we'll have for launch. That's a bit of a tough question, because it's really hard to make predictions about that. We're aiming for something around 100 vehicles at launch, right? Or between 70 and 100 at the moment. The idea is that we have 3 major nations with a significant amount of vehicles, right? So that's the idea. How many we'll have in the end, we'll see. But I think at the moment we're at like 93. There's a bunch of modern vehicles in there as well. A few vehicles that I guess occupy the same rank, like the Panzer IV F2 and the 3M. They're sort of in parallel next to each other. So we'll just roll with the bunches. Hey Stinky, there won't be clown cars, right? This vehicle is a preview at the moment. This is a developer build, right? So it doesn't have textures, it's still work in progress, but it is a car. You can argue it's a clown car to a certain extent, but it's not the World of Tanks clown car that you're probably referring to, right? It's somewhat underpowered. It basically has a little truck engine, right? As you can see here, it doesn't accelerate very quickly, right? It's actually quite slow, so a few tanks may actually out-accelerate it, and the top speed is also quite limited. So you can get up to around 50-55 kilometers an hour, but it takes you quite a while, right? As you can see here, when it goes downhill, okay, that helps, but even then, you can't make like crazy turns, and you cannot like wiggle around, right? So you're still bound by the laws of physics, and it has no armor whatsoever. It's completely made of cheese. Ah, and there we go. And of course, wheeled vehicles are a bit more sensitive to getting stuck in the environment, right? Because we don't have wheels on this one specifically, so if you get stuck on a ledge here, that's gonna be ugly. Yes, the StuG E100 is new, Renan. It's currently still a preview vehicle, so it's not textured. And it's our first reconstruction, you could argue. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Now about the BA6, essentially it's a glass cannon, right? It basically has the same level of firepower as a T-26. The special thing is that it's more mobile. The T-26 is very, very slow. It's a little bit of a, you know, shitbox, you could argue. And the one thing that makes it special is that it has an incredibly good gun. Now that gun is still good at rank 2, and the BA6 simply brings more mobility. Now it's not fast, but it's much faster than a T-26, and that's essentially what makes this vehicle special. Syntic, the install drive, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. That's the old launcher, right? The new installer, you can install that wherever you want. Yeah, I mean, the tanks can climb hills surprisingly well. Now, our physics aren't completely finished, right? But the thing is, there is a reason why a lot of tanks usually have first gears that are geared for something like 5 kilometers an hour. So basically walking pace. And with that, they can generally climb like a, was it 60% slope, I think? So that is quite a lot, right? We're talking, how much is that, like 25-30 degrees, I think, something like that. That's a lot, but you're not going to go up that quickly, right? And that's sort of what you're going to get here, right? Let's have a quick look at the StuG E100, and then we can continue with the showcase of the Kickstarter vehicles. One more question. When will the next open beta test be? So, Kafalek, I already announced it before, I'm going to repeat it. The next open playtest is going to be on the 20th of December. Remember that date. Oh, save the date. It's not 100% set in stone, but we're aiming for the 20th of December. At the 20th, you will get essentially all of the reworks that you can see here. So no user new user interface, more vehicles, all that stuff. And a bunch of other cool things that we're working on right now. They're not in this build. I'm not going to showcase them right now. And we will drop some hints on Patreon about that. And I think there's going to be a significant step up in quality from last time again. Are we going to have historical battles, Germans versus Russian tanks? In a sense, yes, but not for the standard player versus player game modes, right? I think the problem with these historical battles is that you have these very asymmetric matchups, right? Some poor sausage was in a T-70 and met a Panzer, right? And some poor sausage was in a Panzer III and met an IS-2. Now, just because it happened in real life doesn't mean you should replicate it in a game because it's historical, right? And that's really where the trade-off, or the, I guess, finding the balance between staying historically authentic and making a fun game comes into play. And specifically with historical battles, I don't think there is a point in trying to reenact a historical battle in a arcade PvP match. It just doesn't work. Everyone wants to play the Tiger, everyone wants to play the Panzer, and it's just not a good idea. However, that being said, if we take the component of player frustration out of that equation, that means we can still do that. And that's going to be the essentially story-driven modes. So you will be able to, you know, shoot a T-70 with a Panzer or do a lot of other crazy things, probably also including things like the Sturmtiger, artillery, that kind of stuff, in the story-driven PvE modes. Later down the track, also in co-op with your friends, essentially playing through a story. And that gives us a lot more breathing room to tell an interesting story that is educational, right? That is based on something interesting, and that also allows you to do a lot more crazy things, like, you know, shoot something with a Sturmtiger, because we can't balance it in a normal game. We're not even going to approach or try to balance it, but instead we approach it in a different way. We just put it somewhere where we don't have to balance it, because the computer or bots and AI agents, they don't complain if they get shot by a Sturmtiger, right? But we can have a look at the Leopard 2 later down the track, but modern vehicles are really a bit of a preview at the moment. There will be a Sturmi. So, I mean, we already have the Sturmgeschütz, right? There will be an authentic Finnish Sturmi with the additional concrete armor on the front. It's gonna happen, you have my word. It's just not gonna happen right now, but we actually do have a few Finnish vehicles planned. There's gonna be a handful, because a lot of the Patria stuff is Finnish, and they'll essentially go to the Nordic tree. So if you have a look at the filters down here, the tech trees were rearranged. So the German tree combines these nations, the Soviet tree combines these, and so on. And the other trees were rearranged, so we have a European tree with basically every European nation that has tanks. We have a Nordic tree, we have a Pacific tree, we have a Chinese tree, we have a Middle East tree, Latin America, and South Asia. And of course, these one, like Middle East, Latin America, and South Asia, they're not going to be like 400 vehicles, right? They will be smaller, and they'll also be restricted to essentially modern era vehicles only, simply because, you know, South Asia didn't build tanks in World War II, right? And you will be able to unlock them from other branches, essentially. Will we get an offline demo version of the upcoming test? Essentially, yeah, kind of. So right now, if you head on over to our Kickstarter page, you don't have to pledge anything, of course. If you want, you can still pledge, right? But there's a big download button where you can get the demo version 2. There's a new version. It should be online already. I might have to double check, but it's going to be available. And it has most of the user interface features here. It has most of the vehicles. It's not going to have all of the features that will be available in the next playtest. So the next playtest will have more. There will be a lot of new features on top of that. Yes, there's going to be Merkavas and so on. Is it going to be a system report place for physics abuse? Right, so nutrients. Of course, there will be systems in place to penalize toxic behavior, right? The good thing is the entire cheating aspect we have pretty much covered, simply because Steel Aces is built in a way that it's impossible to cheat on a like significant level, right? So you can't have something like a teleport hack, you can't fly around, you can't be invincible, you can't have no reload. All of that is completely impossible. And you also can't magically unveil vehicles that you don't see. So all of that is completely out of the possibility. You won't be able to do that. That being said, of course, it's still possible that people try to abuse physics, that they try to be toxic to other players, push them out of positions, block their shots, that kind of stuff. And we will put systems in place to penalize those. There will be a report system. We'll just have to see how things develop, right? It's really hard to make predictions about which sort of exploits are going to happen, or, well, exploits. I guess it's not exploits, it's more about problematic behaviors really, and we will just have to adjust that and take it as it comes, right? Yes, there's going to be a Finnish T50 as well, most likely. Yes, the game is server authoritative. I have spent some time in the game hacking space as well, right? I've done some game hacking, and I do have a background in, I guess, microcomputer engineering to a certain extent. So I am very aware of the problems that you can get by not having anti-cheat, right? And essentially, you don't have a magic button where you can just make all cheats go away, except for this. This is the only option that you have really. If you essentially turn the player or the computer that you play on into a glorified joystick that just sends inputs and everything is controlled by the server, that is the only way you can really prevent cheating, especially if you have a game like this where you can only shoot so many seconds. This is not like a, I don't know, Counter-Strike or Battlefield where you could in theory kill 20 players in 2 seconds or 3. This just imposes more limits on the player, so you know you have to make tactical decisions. And the one thing that people can't cheat with is tactics, really, right? You have to use your brain and knowledge, and that's what it boils down to. Exorbitant. I have a technical from a dev perspective as a student. Using why did you choose? So. I suppose this is about the big trade-off between Unity and Unreal. Essentially, stuff like Godot and so on, there's other engines that are great for students. I don't think that Godot is currently large enough and has enough tools around it that it could support a large-scale development project like this, right? Both Unreal and Unity are absolutely viable for building large-scale games. Unreal is really more of an artist engine, to be honest. The workflows are, in my personal opinion, right? This is my personal feeling. They're much more suited for an artist producing assets, whereas I think that Unity has better workflows for actual programmers. That being said, I think Unity is just easier to work with because you can code it with C#. C# is simply easier to code with. It's more comfortable, right? I used a ton of C++ myself. It's just that the entire memory management stuff is a bit more complex and just more tedious. It's, you know, you can paint a wall with a small paintbrush, right? You can do it just as well as with a big one. It's just the big paintbrush is going to go faster. And that's really that. Unity is harder to make it look good, right? So that absolutely is the case. It requires a lot more knowledge in figuring things out. For Unreal, you can sort of just throw things in there, and like Lumen and Nanite and so on, they're gonna sort of handle all the rest. Though they've also had their performance problems, so there's no magic solution to having a good-looking game with good graphics, right? It's a gigantic amount of work. It takes a gigantic amount of knowledge and experience, and we're still learning, right? We're working on it. The game looks a lot better than it did a year ago, and we're also going to overhaul a lot of the maps, get a lot of custom assets in, so it will be a lot prettier than it is right now, but it's just a process, right? And when you look at the other big games, something like World of Tanks or War Thunder, right? We're talking about gigantic studios. They have thousands of employees. They have entire teams of 3D modelers that are significantly bigger than our team, entire team, I'm pretty sure, that do stuff like build custom assets for every map. Every asset is optimized. It's specifically built for that game. And we don't have that yet. When you can control all the variables, it's a lot easier to optimize, right? Georgia has a modern IV and doesn't exist. There will be Georgian vehicles, yes. There's not going to be many, but there will be some. It's mostly going to be essentially Soviet modifications, right? Same as with basically all of Eastern Europe, but Georgia is probably going to make an appearance. It's not listed here, however. I'm not quite sure where we're going to list it, because I don't think it belongs to USSR. But we'll see. Europe is probably a bit of a stretch. We'll see where we place it. So C++ is a great tool, right? It's just sometimes you don't want to paint a wall with a small paintbrush. You can get all the nooks and crannies and all the small details, right? The question is, does it matter? Do you actually need that? And especially with Unity having IL2 CPP, performance-wise, it's quite similar. All right, so we have to catch up. East Europe, yeah. I think East Europe maybe, yeah, maybe it's an option, even though it's not really Europe anymore, right? So about the StuG E100, because someone asked before, we'll have a quick look at it. Essentially, this vehicle is a restoration. So let's maybe take the color off. Okay, we can just do that. As you can see, as someone crudely painted it on here, it's a work in progress. This vehicle isn't finished right now, it's not textured, it will go through a few more passes, but this is roughly how it's going to look. And the idea is that there was a proposal, which is quite well documented, about putting a either 15 or 17 centimeter assault gun on the E100 chassis. Now, the E100 chassis was actually built, so we have detailed blueprints for it, and we actually have photographic evidence. It actually existed. I think 2 hulls were built, but as far as I know, they were scrapped after the war. Now, the other thing that we have is a partial blueprint, and it specifically shows the mounting of a, I think in this case, 15 centimeter gun, so the one that we have here, on a casemate, which is essentially this part, and it shows the angle and the thickness. Now, why we decided to go for the Jagdtiger style central casemate vehicle is simple. The E100 has the engine in the back. Now, if you look at other games like, let's say, World of Tanks, they pull the engine into the front, which we deemed less realistic. Essentially, if you already have the E100 hull with the drivetrain in the back, then it makes sense to have an arrangement like the Jagdtiger, which also has the engine in the back. And because we had essentially this part here already predefined, well, it's logical that you'd have a Jagdtiger style casemate. It also has the same armor protection as the angled E100 turret, which is actually quite thin on the side. So unlike the mouse, for example, you cannot angle this vehicle as effectively. You can angle it a little bit, but if you angle it like this, you will get shot through the side, because this is only 80 millimeters. So interestingly, the hull is a lot stronger. It's, I think, 120 or something with 60 millimeter side skirts, whereas the turret side is only 80, and the front is only 200 millimeters at a pretty flat angle. So something like the mouse can actually shoot through here. Now, we can actually take this one for a spin, I think. I'm in the mood. About the Japanese things, I'm not quite sure on the design of the whole right? Because there's a lot of like World of Tanks has a lot of very I guess different interpretations of these vehicles. So they may not look exactly as you expect them from the blueprint, right, or the original design. So there's that. I think the whole was the Ferdinand or elephant style with the casemate in the back, I think in the 100mm, but I'm not quite sure. You may correct me on that. But I think that one actually had a prototype built, or at least some design made, so that one's most likely going to make an appearance in the game. Hey Pershing, thank you for dropping by. As you can see here, by the way, this gun is brutal, right? It's basically the most powerful gun in the game at the moment, at least for the World War II era, right? Of course it's not more powerful than a 120 from a Leopard, but it has a, you know, significant amount of punch, and we can actually, let me have a look. There you see, that shot landed a bit high. I wanted to hit here, but we'll try something. As if you look at this, we actually have around 100 millimeters of pen with HE max, which means that even at 30 degrees and 150-200 meters, we can go through 75 mils. So what we're gonna do is I'll try to punch through the KV-1 hull frontally, and we'll see, because this round has a ton of damage. So, you know, it'd be possible to one-shot that guy even. I don't think it's gonna happen, but in theory. It had a mock-up. Ah, alright. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that I know everything about all vehicles, right? I usually know like at least the basic information about most of them, but especially when it's a bit more obscure stuff, I have to research myself, right? 50% is good looks. Yes, okay. Alright, so with good graphics, I didn't specifically mean realistic, right? Because, for instance, Wall of Tanks isn't super realistic necessarily with a lot of the graphics, but they have a very good art style, right? Like, you cannot say that Wall of Tanks doesn't look good. The game looks really good, and it has incredibly talented artists working on it, right? As you can see here, that one went through. That's a big ouchie. So this is a big thing of essentially lightly armored vehicles, right? Because a lot of them will be penned by HE, not just by this vehicle. So you have to be significantly more careful about how you handle them, right? At the moment you cannot just break one side of the track on the E100 because it has differential steering, so you don't really break one side of the track, it's just you don't really supply power to it. But we'll basically about I guess extended steering methods, like additional braking to facilitate a faster turn, so essentially trading speed for a sharper turn. We'll work on that, but that's really stuff for the future, right? The focus is more on getting the game out at the moment. I'm not familiar with how it looks, right? But we'll see. I mean, I don't think a training ground in that sense is going to make a great map for gameplay, right? But whenever you talk about stuff like that, you have to be very careful with who owns the license to what, who owns what rights, so you don't want to get into trouble like that. So, I'd say let's go back to our little Kickstarter vehicle review. So, the Panzer III K. Essentially, the Panzer III K is basically a perfect mixture between the Panzer III and the Panzer IV F2. It carries the turret of the F2 and it has the hull of the Panzer III. So performance-wise, it's pretty similar to the Panzer IV F2. It's mostly unique looking, right? That's really what it boils down to. In terms of performance, they're almost identical. So you can sort of treat it as a reskin, right? Essentially, the vehicle is a decent all-rounder with a good gun. We don't have a lot of armor, but we have some. It's around 50 millimeters in the front, 30 on the sides, 30 on the rear, and same on the turret. So it's not going to stop a whole lot. You are protected from, I guess, smaller caliber guns, 37s and so on. They generally won't go through you, especially if you angle and at range. But aside from that, don't expect anything magic from the armor you have on this vehicle. Mobility is decent. It's not great, but you can get places, you won't be left behind in general. And you have a very good gun. KWK-40 gets the Panzergranate 39. Essentially, you can destroy any vehicle you meet with this gun, quite reliably and quite accurately and at range. So it's a bit of a fire support medium tank. Hey Truten. I think in this case we can just roll with the Panzer III Ms. I mean, they're quite tanky, they have a significant amount of armor. Whoops. We disrupted his pathfinding there. they're better at crossing the bridge now. It's not finalized, but they don't fall off the bridge all the time anymore. They still can on the other side, I think, but they're much less prone to succumbing to gravity, you could argue. Let's see. One of them should peek around that corner. There we go. Let's see. There we go. He's gonna angle. Can shoot him here. There we go. And they're probably shooting each other in the face. And there we go. Right. We got that one. Oh, there's another one flanking around. You don't want to take any DPM fights with a Panzer III K because they shoot significantly faster than me. So I essentially want to trade shots like this. Preferably shoot him right in the ammo rack. Right there. And there we go. 200 plus. Finish that one off. Let's see if we can get that SMK. Ah, there it is. And one. He's keeping him tracked, so he's not going to move anywhere. Ammo rack is right there. It's somewhere down there in the hole. And there we go. Now, we don't want to take a frontal fight with an SMK necessarily, because the 45 can still punch through us frontally, especially at close range. And that's a bit too much damage output for it to be comfortable. What we can do is we can flank around, and there we go. There we go. There we go. And now the last one. Go. Sometimes you just gotta wait until you get a nice angle, right? Alright, how was that one? Next round of questions. So, a date for the new offline version? Well, the new offline version already is available. So if you head on over to Kickstarter, you can download the new offline version. It's going to have the updated UI. It will have basically all of the improvements that this version has, except for the new vehicle pool. So it's not going to have all of the vehicles, right? And the servers will be online again on the 20th of December. Right now, that's the day we're aiming for. That's going to be the next round of open testing. The date isn't set in stone, but we're aiming for the 20th. Hey Tooten, good to see you around. I mean, at the moment the plan is for launch to be just normal, right? Like once the game is launched, the servers will run basically all the time. Of course there will be maintenance windows. I hope there's not going to be any big hiccup where we do have to take them down for a longer time. I don't think it's going to happen. It could possibly happen, but right now don't think so. Once the game is live, it's live. Now, onto the next Kickstarter vehicle, the A34. Now, why is it called A34, not T34? Well, it's because this is the last prototype before the actual production T34. So it's basically like a T34 like 1939, 1940 maybe. And yeah, you can see that with all of the rounded parts, right? The lower plate here, the weld is very rounded. It's also quite thin. So unlike the later T34s, if you look here, you have around 40-45 mils. It's actually a weak point. On the regular T34, this is not a weak point. Do not try to shoot this. If you look here, you have around 100 mils. So it's actually one of the thickest parts down here. That weld was reinforced. This is not the case on the early A34. So this one has a significant weak point. And you also have the early style driver's hatch and the shorter L11 gun. So the gun is significantly weaker than the F34, right? Plus you don't have the additional armor. Now, why do we have this vehicle? What's special about it? Well, it is extremely fast. So because it is significantly lighter, at around 26 tons compared to 31, the top speed is also much higher. It's capable of going almost 70 kilometers an hour. So basically you have a T-34 on speed, literally. And that's what you use this tank for. You do have some trade-offs when it comes to armor penetration. So you, as you can see, you get around 83 max, which isn't great with the AP round, but the APCR with around 120 generally makes up for it. As you can see, you shouldn't really take shots at long range, but you have the mobility to get in close, right? Hey TomTom. The T100, that depends. I think the T100 may be a collector's, right? We'll see, right? We have a right now we have around 1,800 vehicles planned, and that's not counting sub-variants, so that's just essentially slots in the tech trees. There is a significant portion of vehicles that are marked as special vehicles, and those could be collectors later down the track, or also reward vehicles. And the idea for a reward vehicle is that you can actually unlock it in the game through something special. So instead of just paying for it, or just grinding for it, the reward vehicle should actually have a special mission attached, or an achievement, something like that. Now, how we're going to unlock them isn't completely decided at the moment, but we'll see where it goes. And the T100 could be one of both, right? It could be a collector's vehicle, it could also be a reward vehicle that you can unlock. Now, we really don't want to fight this guy head on. Good thing is, he has no armor on the side. It's made of cheese, basically, especially the lower part of the hull there. Ah, that was a bit too high. We hit the side part where the plates intersect. No, I'm not gonna go through there anymore. But when he turns his armor, we can... Yes, there we go. That's where the ammo is, and there we go. Unfortunately, we can't showcase the mobility that much on this map because it's such close quarters. There we go. And of course, it's also not super quick when going around corners, right? Because it still uses, or it uses the standard T-34, I guess, way of movement, which is clutch braking. You are really fast in a straight line. You are strongly encouraged to not try and turn the vehicle. Once you're going in a straight line, it's okay, but try to avoid unnecessary turns. So, we can take him out. T14, really heavily armored. We really don't want to try and waste our time with AP rounds on this one. VK65 is sort of in a similar boat. It's around 80 mils all round, if I remember correctly. So, we might be able to go through the rear of the turret with AP, actually. Especially if he's laser focused. Nope. That's actually already too much. Unfortunate. No. KV1 got stuck. But we can go through the KV1 most likely. There we go. There we go. That one should go through. There we go. Simply because the KV1 has 75, and we should be able to go through there. Maybe we can see. Yeah, there we go. As you can see here, we're shooting underneath the additional armor plating. Alright, and we got a turret pop. As you can see, there's like, you have pretty good damage output, right? The gun hits quite hard. It's still the 76, has a lot of high explosive filler. It's just you have to be really smart about where to place the vehicle and how to get into position to use the gun. Will there be a modern tanks beta in 2026? I mean, yeah, like most likely, right? There will be modern tanks for testing in 2026. I don't think we're going to test it this year. As you can see, we expanded the roster a little bit. There's a BMP one now. We can have a look at that later, quickly, right? If you guys want. But aside from that, as you can see, the roster is quite small, right? And they're also quite far apart. And we can't really do something like 11 and 16. They don't really go together. And the BRDM2 is actually more of a test vehicle at the moment, right? It doesn't really have any significant anti-armor effect. It has a KPVT with which can have some penetration, but it's not going to take out a tank. So this is more of an experimental vehicle where we can test special game mechanics later down the track. I'm not going to spoil them now, but it's certainly not considered for the standard lineup. And with that in mind, we this one is a placeholder, right? So we only have like 9 vehicles essentially. So we'll need a lot more vehicles to actually launch a proper test. So then let's go for the KV-122. Slightly outdated model. Once the IS-2 model is updated, we will also swap out the turret, and this one will get the new turret as well. So what's special about this? Well, basically it's a lighter IS version, you could argue, right? It still has the 122 D25, so essentially it has the same firepower as the IS-2, or the IS-122, you could argue. It's just in a lighter package, right? You don't get all of the additional armor, you still have a KV-85 hull, so essentially it's more unique, but in a direct confrontation it's a little weaker, to be honest, and that really falls in line with the approach to balancing collectors vehicles, right? It shouldn't be better than something you can work for, or it should be equivalent. Alright. We got some M6s, we got some VKs. The good thing is nothing can stand up to our gun in this game. So we can basically point and click everything. As you can see, we have massive pen. We can go through like 200. That's overkill for all of these. Will there be an Armata and an Abrams X? Yes, there will be Armata and Abrams X later down the track. Same as K41 and so on. The IS-2 1944 is currently planned to be rank 9, yes. Let's see if we can get a side shot on someone. VK just rushed through there. We'll have a look at the VK in a second. There we go. Was a little short to get a full hit on the ammo. And I think we can just wait for the next one. There we go. Oh, that was a bad one. I have to double check that one. I think we managed to hit the return roller there. I'll have to check if... Yeah, I'll have to double check that, because I think I know why. The skirts are thick enough to set off the fuse on the AP round. That's why. Because they're like 12 mils, so it's actually thick enough to detonate the round. It's not because the armor is thick, don't worry. I think we can just upper front plate him. Yep, there we go. The VK doesn't have as much armor as the Tiger II. It does look alike, but I also don't know what's going on here. It may be that they're just going crazy. I'll have to take a note for that. I'll just have to tell the hamster, so we can come over and have a look. As you can see there, that one only dealt 280 because I aimed a bit too high, right? A lot of the spall didn't actually hit anything. This one's going back, alright. It really seems to be a bit of a pathfinding issue where for some reason they're trying to go back or around. As you can see here, the HE round just goes through the rear, no problem. But we'll have to diagnose this. Like this is not as intended, obviously. We may actually skip out because I don't think there's anything to be gained here from shooting essentially tanks that get stuck. That's something we'll have to. I just gotta take notes for a second. Alright. Now, okay, for the next vehicle. VK4502P. So, essentially at rank 8 we have 2 German heavy tanks at the moment. We have the baby Tiger II, you could argue, or the Tiger II prototype, the VK4503, and the VK4502P, specifically the version with the turret at the back. I think this was version 1 or version B. So there's that. What's special about this vehicle? Well, it basically has the same turret as the Tiger II. So, well, the front profile isn't huge, and at longer range you can bounce a lot of shots, especially on the gun mantlet or on the side. The armor isn't super thick, it's only around 100mm. You get the long 88, which is one of the best guns you can get at that rank, so you have more than enough penetration to deal with any target you want. You have a decent amount of damage output. Now, what the difference between these two vehicles specifically is that this one is significantly lighter. If you look at mobility, this one is around 57 tons, this one is at 68. And this means that the VK4502 is, the P, is significantly faster. Plus you have the turret in the rear, so you can side scrape differently than with a Tiger II. And that's essentially what's special about this vehicle. It's basically a lighter armored, rear turreted baby Tiger II, you can argue. You can get rid of the old offline demo. The old offline demo was installed manually, if I remember correctly, and you're not going to like update it via anything. You also won't be able to update the old launcher to the new one. It's just too problematic. Too many like systems just don't line up. We can't deliver an auto upgrade, unfortunately. As you can see here, we just zoom past him. You have to be careful because there's 3 elephants and they have the same gun as we do, but they shoot faster. Is the Moistion... there was a Moistion vehicle, yes. There were quite a few of these, but the Moistion did exist, so it's not made up. What is made up, for all I know, is something like the E90, right? Like the Jagdpanzer E90. I'm pretty sure that is just a fanfiction from modelers, like skill modelers. Alright, as you can see here, we just go through the front of the turret. He disappeared here. Oh, okay, great. Look the other way, sir. Let's see. Oh, alright. Elephant is giving us the chocolate side. Let's see, these 2 guys should be starting any second now. And once we have him, we can sort of move up a little bit. Yeah. Oh! No, that was a bit too low. That was an HE round. You can shoot the lower plate, and you can also shoot the frontal plate at that angle actually, because it's only 200, but it's very flat. So unless you angle specifically, you can usually go through there with a long 88. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Truppenwagen is a bit too fantastical for us. Ah, we actually managed to snipe through that gap. Let's see. Okay. Ah, he doesn't have a track. Oh no. There we go. Perfect timing. Let's go ahead and try to take out the more dangerous gun first. So here. I can probably even ram him. Alright, there we go. Into the ammo. One. So we got him. I got some audio loop stuck here, I'll write that down. Generally speaking, yes, Noir. So it's more about, does your spall hit something, right? If you hit the ammo rack with, let's say, 10% of your spall and the other 90% going over, you still deal reduced damage. But if you manage to hit like a proper shot that hits as many things inside the vehicle as possible, that's better. And if it hits a lot of ammo, then it does even more damage. With that said, we can move to the last vehicle, which is the T-64BM. It's a Ukrainian vehicle, the Bulat, or the Bull. What's special about this one? Well, it's essentially like a Bull, right? It has a significant amount of frontal protection. As you can see here, we have these like little blocks, and what this is there's multiple layers of ERA in here. It's a special type. It's called niche in Ukrainian, which stands for knife. And the idea is that you have these cumulative jets that are not fired forward like in a heat round to punch through armor, but they are fired sideways, so away from the ERA. It's basically like an explosive charge to detonate, to like fall, knock over a building, right? Because they're also designed to cut through like a steel pillar, for example. That's what niche is as well. Right now, ERA isn't fully modeled in the game, so the frontal protection is not where it should be. You get the standard 125mm Soviet gun with 3BM42. I think that one's Mango, if I remember correctly. And then you get some extra ERA on the side panels and a bunch of ERA on the turret. So essentially, you're looking at a like heavily up-armored modified T-64 that can also fire missiles. I'd say for this one, we're not actually going to take it for a test drive, simply because the maps are so small with the PvE agents that it just turns into a slugfest, and they're not really balanced at the moment, so it's a little chaotic. But we can take them to a shooting range at least. You can also see we have 3 different types. We have an earlier round and we have a later round. They also look different. Simply because it's inspired by the real design. Here you go. I mean, this is an, you know, it's a placeholder, so the armor isn't necessarily modeled correctly, but as you can see, we have a very high muzzle velocity, right? Like 1700 meters a second. So all of these modern tanks, they generally speaking fight at significantly longer ranges, right? That's what we'll also see in the game, right? For modern vehicles, we'll have larger scale maps, so we can simply have engagements at longer ranges. Let's see. You can see here also like target selection, right? There's almost nothing basically, because there's so few vehicles at the moment. We can try the missile at least. Enforced use of gunner sight. I think it was Okay, so about gunner sights, what the gunner does not have to account for, generally speaking, is how far his sight is away from the gun, right? In real life, it does happen, right? When you shoot a regular rifle, there is something called height over bore, well, I think, where essentially if you have a rifle with a barrel down here and you have a scope up here, then your shot can't land exactly where you aim, right? Especially at like close range, because you're looking through the scope up here and the barrel is down here, right? That doesn't work. Now with tank guns, things are a little different, because you're not talking about ranges of 50 meters or 100 meters, you're talking about ranges of thousands of meters, and at that range, that effect is mostly negligible. That being said, for realistic, nothing is out of the question, right? Like a realistic will have different damage sets, right? Realistic will probably get an entirely different level of balancing. There's a lot of vehicles that work for arcade because we have life points, but they may not work for realistic. So there's a significant chance that the vehicle pool for realistic will simply be reduced, because some vehicles are a bit too toxic in realistic, or they could be toxic, and there's no point in essentially ruining the experience for other tanks with some, niche vehicle. You can see there we managed to sling that one into the dirt. What do you mean with sigma for accuracy alterations? I mean, I suppose you're talking about how we disperse the shot within the circle. So the way that works in Steel Aces is, right now I think we're fitting 1.75 standard deviations in here, I think. Something like that. So the shots land significantly closer to the center than you're used to from other games. Plus the accuracy itself is generally pretty high. For our realistic, of course, you'll get like a manual scope where you either have to like aim like this. I mean, you can technically enforce it already in the game right now. If I were to lock my aiming distance at this vehicle, you can see my reticle drops, right, the dispersion circle. So I actually have to aim higher. I can use this for the moment. So if I want to shoot the lower plate, my actual point of aim is higher here, right? So the game like already supports it because the ballistics are there. It's just that for realistic it's disabled, so the game compensates for that, right? It already super elevates the gun for you. For realistic, that's not going to be the case. Well, for this vehicle you will just laser, right? You'll press a button, it will laser, and then you fire. They're also gonna have I guess all of the additional modern support systems like leading your shots. So for instance on the Abrams, what you do is you don't lead the shot manually. The gunner puts the reticle on the tank and he keeps it on the tank. So you track the vehicle, then you push a button to laser, right? It happens in the blink of an eye. It essentially fires out a laser to acquire the target, and then you go on the way and fire the shot. And it's going to do everything else for you, basically. I think earlier versions essentially tracked the rotation speed of the turret and just kept that constant, basically. Modern fire control systems, of course, are heavily digitalized and they do all of that for you. Yes, there will be rangefinders in realistic Smokey. We're still thinking about how specifically we're going to implement them, but I think that, for instance, coincidence rangefinders, let me think, I'm sure we have one on one of these vehicles. This one. There you go. What this is this is a coincidence rangefinder. So essentially you have a bar going across with mirrors at each end, right? And what you can do is you can essentially look at a target from two different positions as long as you know how far those points are apart. And with that you can figure out how far the target is away. It was actually used on battleships at first and on land, but it can also be used in tanks, and there's quite a few that used it over the time or over the years. And this is the, I guess, German variant of it. Now, how it looks for the gunner is, generally speaking, you get you have your regular sight, and one half is from one side and one half is from the other, right? And what you can do is by adjusting the range, it's a mechanical thing, right? You can shift the two images, and it's essentially it cuts the image in half. So when you have the incorrect range adjusted, you might see the turret of the Panzer floating in air over here and the hull on the left. So you dial the knob, you adjust the range, and when you add the correct range, then everything looks how it should, right? Then the turret sits like square on the vehicle. That's the idea. And we'll probably replicate that in the game as well. There's a few things we'll have to think about, like how we handle it performance-wise, right? Because there's a lot of implications when you have to like render two images, but we'll figure something out. That's the idea. Now that's a realistic thing, right? It's not really relevant for arcade, and it also shouldn't matter, right? The whole point of arcade is having a simple entry point. We can just focus on, I guess, tactics and strategy. How do I move my vehicle? How do I, move around in a way that I can avoid making big mistakes, putting myself into bad positions, and that's that, right? For realistic, we can go ahead and focus on the small details. Hi Grugbug. Hi Mark. Yeah, Boatman. So like I'm very confident that Wargaming out-earns our entire development budget multiple times in a single day. Oh, World of Tanks alone. Like you don't even need all of Wargaming. So we have very small resources, but we're working incredibly hard. And I'm very optimistic that once the game is out and we can, generate revenue and actually grow the project significantly at an accelerated rate. Once we have that, I think it's gonna be great. Now, another thing that I don't think a lot of people noticed, because it was only shown yesterday, is there were some adjustments that were made to the Bulldog. And I'll be honest, I'm biased. I have a strong preference towards the Bulldog tank. That's where my nickname comes from, right? But there is some documentation, we could find it, it's listed in Honeycut. There were experimental autoloaders for the M41 Bulldog, or specifically the T41 program. So essentially what the Americans did is, after the war, they wanted to replace the M24 chassis because, it's not the strongest vehicle, talking about 1950s, right? So the idea was we want a new light tank that replaces the chassis, and that resulted in the T37 program. Now there were multiple versions of the T37 with multiple phases of the turret going through like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and the vehicle that was, I think, the T41E1, which ended up being standardized as the M41 Walker Bulldog later down the track, had an experimental autoloader fitted with 26 shots, which is of course crazy, right? That's a lot of rounds, but we wanted to replicate that to a certain extent in the game. Now the thing with autoloaders is that there's essentially two approaches to handling them, and the first one is to essentially portray them like in real life, which is that they, generally speaking, provide an improved fire rate overall, but it's not like we're talking about 2 seconds of reload. We're talking about, let's say, 4 seconds instead of 6, right? And the problem with that is that they don't really feel unique. Now for realistic, that's probably how they will be handled, simply because you have to limit firepower a little bit. For arcade, we don't need that. For arcade, we want essentially the trade-off between being able to burst targets, so you have higher damage output when you have the clip loaded, and window of vulnerability when you're on reload. And that's exactly what this is. Now, at the moment we opted for 10 shots, we might go as high as 12. The reason why we don't give it 26 is obvious. First of all, because 26 shots you could play in most games without ever having to reload. And the second one is that if you had to reload, the reload would be immense. We're talking about 90 seconds reload. It's just too clunky, right? It doesn't really work. Now, because tanks in real life, generally speaking, have roughly 50% high explosive, 50% armor piercing rounds. Sometimes it's more like 70-30, but because they generally have a lot of high explosive rounds and not just armor piercing rounds, the idea is that the vehicle gets just 12 shots on that basis. So essentially, are using AP or HE, you'll get a 12-round magazine, right? And that's why it works like a standard autoloader that we're used to. When will clan options come? So, we did hit our Kickstarter goal for clans, right? Like, technically it was after the campaign, but we did hit that waypoint, so, or milestone, sorry. So there will be clans available at the launch of the game. That's what we're aiming for. There won't be the, like, full clan ecosystem with, like, competitive and whatever. That's, I don't think that is something we'll be able to pull off, right? But we can at least make clans available for players so they can, you know, group together and start building communities, because that's one of the most important parts, right? Like, sure, we have the tanks, but we also have the people that are with us, right? We have our friends, we have our friend groups in the clans, you know. I remember quite often when I played back in the day, I played because I was talking with friends and playing with friends, and not necessarily because of the game. And I think that's a really good opportunity to bring people together and start community building early on. No, there will not be a health bar system as an arcade, Smokey. So, I mean, of course there's like an internal health system which describes the like status of the components, right? Like, you need that because there's some way you need to portray if a track has been destroyed or something, so that will exist. But essentially the decision whether a vehicle is destroyed or not, that will be based on other criteria, and that's essentially going to be, are there at least two crew members that are left, right? Some vehicles may be different because they have like overrides and whatever, but generally speaking, for a World War II tank you need at least 2 vehicles, and you're being very generous there, right? You need one guy to drive and you need one guy to like handle everything in the turret. That's the idea. And of course, if you hit ammo or something, then you can also blow it up. So realistic damage models will be significantly more punishing, right? As you can see up here, like, we already have all of the pieces, right? In fact, believe me when I tell you, it is significantly harder to actually assign a balanced life point damage value based on the fragmentation or the spoil inside the vehicle. It's actually harder to come up with a consistent number than just, you know, saying, vehicle destroyed, right? Oh, how the autoloader looks. Well, it's not modeled in here at the moment, right? But the idea for the autoloader is you basically have like 2 storage racks that are like semi-curved, right? And in the center you have a pillar that goes up, right? And the shells are pushed in from the side, and the loader picks them up, pulls them up, pushes them into the gun. So pretty straightforward. I don't think it was super reliable because they didn't continue with it. Maybe it was just super expensive, but chances are that one of these early autoloaders was just unreliable, and that's why they didn't use it. The only autoloader type that was like consistent at the start, that I remember at least, are the drum type autoloaders, and that's why we see them so much. That's why they're so prevalent. Hey, Rogues Drift. Well, first of all, thank you very much for showing up, right? You'd like to know how progression works in this game. You're coming from War Thunder and really look forward to this game. So, first of all, thank you very much for showing up, right? The game is still in development, right? There's a lot of things we're working on. The realistic game mode will take a while to implement, so it's not gonna come directly at the start. You will have to make do with arcade mode for the moment. But I guess on the duality of that, a few things to note. First of all, we do not want to make one game mode irrelevant. So we're not going to have a scenario where you can only grind in realistic or you can only grind in arcade. We don't want that. Both game modes should be equally viable. It's just personal preference. Some players will prefer to play arcade, some players will prefer to play realistic, and some players will play both. And every single one of those options is fine. We just have to make sure that both game modes are fun and work well. So, about progression. The idea is, I can show you the tech trees in a second. The idea is that you unlock and purchase a vehicle, let's say the M41 Bulldog, and then you can unlock a few upgrades for that vehicle. And those will generally be ammunition, vehicle maintenance, maybe a new engine, maybe improvements to the gun, something like that. And once you have all of those upgrades unlocked, which could also include a new vehicle version, you can see here the Autoloader is quite potent. You have a lot of firepower. Once you have all of those upgrades installed, some of which will actually change the vehicle's name. One example being this one here. Right now it's not set up in the game like that, but later down the track, the Panzer IV F1, so this one, will be the base version of the F2, which is this one. So you basically get the small tank first. You can unlock 1 or 2 upgrades for that, maybe like some engine maintenance, maybe a new heat round. And then the next upgrade is going to be a upgrade to the F2 version. And then you continue to upgrade this vehicle. That's the idea. And you work your way down a line of vehicles. So you don't have the War Thunder system where you need to grind like 6 vehicles that you don't care about to unlock the next tank. You can go from one vehicle to the other. On release, the progression lines will be, I guess, a bit more streamlined. Right now there's a lot of vehicles that sort of float around in space for testing, but you'll have, you know, your German heavy tank line, your German medium tank line, and you just progress down that line. That's the general idea. Once you get to rank 10, the end of the historical era, you could argue, progression will change. For modern vehicles, you don't have to follow down a line. The modern vehicles will be token based. So essentially with a rank 10 vehicle, you can earn a token for a rank 11 of that same nation, and then you just go for 11, 12, 13, 14, whichever category you want. So you can swap between, let's say, wheeled vehicles, light tanks, main battle tanks, fire support. It doesn't matter. You can just progress to the next rank like that. You just unlock a token. On a rank 11 vehicle, you unlock a token for a rank 12 vehicle, and then you unlock any of the rank 12s on that rank in that specific tech tree. That's the idea. Why we have that? Very simple. We want a consistent progression and a consistent sort of feeling to gameplay for the World War II era, and it simply makes progression more structured. It also prevents rushing through the game too quickly. For the modern era, the grind will essentially flatten out. So you're not going to exponentially grind more and more and more. In the end, you need 10 years to unlock a vehicle. That's not going to happen. The grind will basically flatten out at 11. So the hardest grind you have in the game will probably be 10 to 11. And then it's more smooth sailing all the way up to 19. The reason why some vehicles have to be arcade only is simply because they may be too annoying, right? Especially wheeled vehicles, stuff with ATGMs, missiles, can be extremely oppressive. And the thing is, in the game we don't have the real life threats that exist that balance them, right? If something like a Striker ATGM, right, what's it, the M1134 I think or something, it's a Striker with a double missile launcher on there, right? If that truly were the best thing since sliced bread ever and can fulfill anything that a tank can, we'd only build those, right? But we don't. Because in real life you have things like artillery, drones, mines, lots of other smaller threats that we don't have in the game and that you don't want in the game, right? We've decided we don't want artillery. But all of those threats exist on a real life battlefield. And in the game, we only focus on tank versus tank combat, right? That helps make the game feel consistent. There is a logic to it. You don't have these frustrating moments where you get blown up by an artillery from somewhere, by a helicopter. You don't have that. But it also means that balancing is a bit harder, because suddenly something like a Striker could be very, very oppressive because it's faster than everything else and it might have a similar level of firepower. And you can't necessarily balance that in realistic because everything has similar survivability, right? Like an Abrams is not going to survive an ATGM through the side of the turret. So that's really the reasoning why. And that's mostly for very few specific vehicles that could cause problems, or maybe they will just go up in rank. We will have to see about that. Yeah, the Wiesel tow might be one of those, right? Or especially the sort of like car stuff, you know, like a Humvee with a tow launcher on there. That's stuff that we generally try to avoid. There will be some vehicles that are similar to that in the regular tech tree, but there's not going to be like Jeep spam everywhere, simply because it's hard to shoot them back to a certain extent, and it's illogical to make them like dedicated tank destroyers, basically. Different ranks due to banner is the tank like exactly, right? So stuff like the Sturmtiger, there will be a Sturmtiger, right? It will happen later in the game. It's just that it will probably be in a story-driven mode. So somewhere where you can shoot a computer, right? NPCs that don't care about being, you know, obliterated. So you can have the fun of shooting someone with a Sturmtiger, even co-op with friends probably, right? But we don't have the balancing problems that comes with. Able to unlock armor pack? Yes, yeah. So especially for modern vehicles, a significant amount of the upgrades will be in armor packages. For instance, the Leopard 2A4, there's significant differences between an early and late Leopard 2A4. They may look almost the same on the outside, but whether you have like a B or C tech armor package is a huge difference. And that is something that you'll be able to feel in the game, right? Funnel tank game, on and off with the funnel tank game. Well, I mean, we have the chance to start on from a fresh slate here, right? And I played World of Tanks. Everyone in the team played World of Tanks, I think, or at least War Thunder, right? We've all experienced these games, and it's not like they're bad games, right? I'm not going to say that World of Tanks is a bad game. You may say they're a competitor and everything, it doesn't matter. World of Tanks is not a bad game, but I think it's a game that is not necessarily made for all of us. And, you know, there are only 2 games in the tank space, really. Who says there can't be a third? And there are people that love playing World of Tanks. There are many people who will continue to love playing that, and that's good and fine. And there's a lot of people who will prefer War Thunder. That's not a problem, right? We care about the people that love to play Steel Aces, and we focus on that, and everyone has their share and everyone can be happy. Something like I think the problem with the Shilka is that it has too much firepower. If you move it down so far that it can start to punch through armor, suddenly you have like 423 mils and it just eviscerates things. The Gepard may work because it only has 2, but that's something we will have to be very, very careful on balancing, right? A training but we can, without wasting, there will be training rooms later down the track. I'm not sure whether we'll have them on launch. We have the training test drive at the moment, so you can try out any vehicle you want, right? Even vehicles that you don't have, you'll be able to do that. But yeah. Thank you for the vote of confidence, I put. Yes, yeah, and that's what I mean, right? Like, I'm not gonna say it's a bad game. It's just a game that's maybe not made for us, right? And that's the direction they're going in, and that is their decision, right? And I understand that it is frustrating for a lot of players to see the game that they fell in love with a decade ago sort of like turn away from what they from the direction they wanted to go in. But you also have to accept that, right? It's just sometimes things like that happen, and Steel Aces is the game for all those people, right? Will there be an ELC even in the game? Yes, there will be some ELC even vehicles. The main issue with the ELC even is that it is incredibly small. We're actually going to hop into a test drive and have a look at the BMP1. the ELC is extremely small, right? And it's one of those little heat slingers. They have between 2 and 300 pen. Heat performance is quite inconsistent, right? Same as the BMP here, like it's usually listed as 300. We opted for 270 at the moment, simply because there will be revised heat mechanics later down the track in the game. The idea is that heat rounds will be nerfed when shooting through thick armor. So this is going to help vehicles like the Mouse and so on survive. Because in real life, a heat round loses a significant amount of damage when punching through thick armor. Now, technically speaking, you know, there are rounds that, you know, can go through 600 millimeters. The thing is, after 600 millimeters, you basically get like a drizzle. There's almost no behind armor effect. Whereas if they go through 500, you get a significantly larger damaging effect. And that's the idea. So we'll, depending on the individual vehicle, and of course some balancing considerations, but generally speaking, we will probably downrate the penetration quotes of heat rounds a little bit, and also introduce some mechanics such that when they punch through that armor, they deal full damage, but they deal increased damage against thin armor, maybe reduced damage against very thick armor. We'll have to play with that and just test it out. I don't... I'm 50, I don't want stupid bears and cats driving tanks. Yeah, so we're not going to have like bears and cats driving tanks in the game. We will probably have a mascot that teaches you how to drive a tank, but you know, that's optional. The game will take itself seriously. There will be fun game modes, right? There will be like racing and event game modes later down the track, but all of those are optional, right? We're not going to have like some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle skin for your tiger or something. It's not gonna happen. So I think the thing with War Thunder, or in general selling these vehicles, is that they said they wouldn't, right? Now, I'm gonna say it already, right? We're not going to restrict vehicle sales to ranks, right? So simply because of how the way the game works, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to purchase a rank 10 vehicle. That being said, there are some limitations. With the exception for Kickstarter right now, you won't be able to just play a vehicle or buy a vehicle that you haven't actually unlocked in rank. So you're not going to have wallet warriors that buy a rank 10 vehicle and they go around and ruin your day because they don't know what they do. It's a protection both for the teammates and the community, and also for these people. Steel Aces has a significantly higher learning curve than other games, and it would be unfair to allow them to purchase a rank 10 vehicle that they can't possibly handle and they just get annihilated in, right? So there's that. With the entire policy being that we have collector's vehicles that are essentially either unique weird prototypes or usually worse than normal tanks, there's no reason why you shouldn't sell a rank 14 vehicle or something, right? They're not better, they're just different. That's that. That being said, we're not going to have like $100 vehicles, so while the pricing isn't completely figured out, right, we focus on building the game more than thinking about prices we want to charge. But that being said, we're not going to have like crazy expensive $100 vehicles or something. That's not the plan. And we also don't want to have like a grey market where you can buy an i7 for 1,200 euros. We want to keep the game straightforward, no bullshit, right? Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people share that sentiment, Thomas, that they really don't like pay to win, right? Currently the Malyutka, which is the 83 Sagar, so the little missile here, is not completely implemented on the BMP, right? So it doesn't quite work. You can shoot missiles, the model will be updated, some of the missile flight mechanics will be updated, and right now the turret doesn't rotate automatically, so you have to basically point the gun in the correct direction before you can actually launch the missile, right? as you can see here, the wiggle will be adjusted. It's a little too erratic at the moment. It's like too inconsistent at long ranges and too small at short range. I think it's a pretty simple consideration, Rogue, right? Like, the idea is that we have to protect both our community and the player themselves, right? And I think it's in the long term, even when you say you only focus on money, I think it's actually smarter to give someone something they can actually enjoy and have fun with than, I don't know, take $50 from them and have them frustrated and they stop playing the game because they can't actually do anything with it. You know, better to have a player that plays for 5 years. They will spend more money in 5 years than if they buy a vehicle for $50 once and then they get angry and leave. Silly customization like the beer or wine glass. Yeah, so I think that's sort of like real life humor, right? Where, like, yes, it exists. That's actually something that I don't have a problem with, right? I don't want anime girls or skins and stuff like that, right? It just doesn't make sense. If someone really wants that, they can always mod it, right? But the game itself takes itself seriously, and if you want to have a fun game mode, that's fine, but that is, you know, separated in the fun game mode. As for decals and stickers, there will be updates to the customization systems in the game, and with decals and stickers there will of course be historical versions, and there will also be, I guess, authentic things where you could say, well, they could have happened, like, let's say, German tankers. They usually named the tanks after females, usually the wife or girlfriend of the commander, and so you can basically put any name on there that you want, right? Same with like these the regimental numbers or whatever they're called. You can also put those on there. That's fine. Maybe there will be some slightly more fantastic decals and stickers, but they will be categorized in a special category as non-historical, so anyone who doesn't want to see that can just turn them off. So Niels Olaf, yeah, the King Penguin, I think he was promoted recently, right? Yeah, I mean, you know, something like that. I'm always up for something like this because it doesn't hurt anyone, right? But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the moment. I think we'll take a quick look at the MX-13 because that one was adjusted as well. It still has an autoloader, but it went down to rank 8. And then we'll, I think, wrap it up for today. Hi, Hunty. I think for that you will probably just get a Finnish KV-1E, to be honest, right? I don't think you'll get you'll modify a Soviet KV-1E. You'll just get your Finnish one because it's a captured vehicle, and the Nordic line can surely use a rank 5 heavy tank, so it's probably just going to be one over there. There will be commanders and voice packages that you can purchase later, right? So that is planned to be part of customization essentially and monetization. The idea is right now we don't have a commander system, right? We only have like placeholder voices that are there so you hear something what happens. But the full-on commander system later down the track will essentially have different archetypes of commanders. So there will be a heavy tank commander, a light tank commander, a tank destroyer commander, and they might all have like slightly different advantages or slightly different niches that they're useful for. And we'll see how far we go into that area. We don't want to completely transform how the game plays depending on your commander, right? We don't want that. But just so you have a little bit of flexibility in like crew abilities and perks, so you can customize your vehicle a little more with how it plays. And of course for that, there's always the option that, you know, maybe there's someone that has a really cool voice that I really like, right? And it doesn't hurt anyone if you spend a few bucks on having a cool in-game commander, right? Well, the thing is, I mean, technically, if it's really required, we are not above moving a vehicle up or down a rank, right? I mean, as you can see, the MX-13 was moved down a rank. Of course, right now a lot of things are still being adjusted, but if a vehicle really overperforms that much later in the game, then yes, we will move it up a rank if it's required. Though the first attempt would probably be to simply adjust the statistics on the vehicle, right? Alright, as you can see here, the MX-13 works a little different, right? You have a pretty short clip reload actually, but the shots, the reload between shots is significantly slower than before. So you don't get the luxury of clipping out vehicles like before. It's harder, you have to be more strategic, but you still have good damage output overall. That's simply because compared to the Bulldog, the MX-13 is just, you know, quite a bit older and slower. It's not that fast actually. It's almost a little sluggish for a light tank, and the gun is decent, but the autoloader is manually operated. As you can see here, you have these two drums. They're actually operated by a hand crank, so it's not an electric loader. You actually have to crank it for it to load. Yeah, Tanker, there's probably going to be decals for naming tanks, but you won't be able to put your own name on there because we know what's going to happen with that, right? Like, someone will drop something very offensive or rude on there, and that's not going to happen. But you'll get a lot of names you can choose from. I think the last thing for today, just a little bit of info as before, make the announcements again. So, the demo version 2, which is close to this is the developer build, but the demo version 2 is now available on Kickstarter, so you can all head on over there, download that. It's completely for free, and simply test out the game. It has significantly updated UI, so all of the user interface is prettier, it's been updated. In-game improvements, vehicle physics are different. If you last played a few months ago, it's going to be completely different this time. And yeah, also has NPC offline agents. They were updated as well. They had some improvements made. They're still not finished, of course. They're still very much in testing, but they behave better, they drive better. And the last thing, of course, yes, sorry, I had to go through my notes. There will be another playtest on the 20th of December. Right now, the date is not set in stone, but the plan is 20th of December, may shift one day or so, but be ready then. That's the next time you can play against real players, and then we'll, you know, see how all of the changes basically resonate with you guys. We're going to collect a lot of feedback again. The game or the version will have a lot more changes than you can see right now. This is only a part. There will be a bunch of changes on top of that. So this, what you see right now, is not reflective of the version you will get on the 20th of December. Thank you, Grog. Thank you very much for showing by. All right. Last thing, we have a Hetzer. That's pretty much that. It's a, you know, compact little vehicle. It's essentially an alternative to the StuG. The frontal armor is kind of better. Like, the 60mm angled are quite nasty, especially if you can sort of put it hull down. The side is made of paper mache. It will get penned by high explosive rounds quite a bit, and that's pretty much that, right? The StuG has slightly higher firepower. I think it shoots a bit faster. The Hetzer is a bit smaller and more compact. It's really, you know, personal taste, right? Whichever one you like more. So here we go. Now the engine sound may not be set up, right? I think it's just a placeholder at the moment, because I remember the Hetzer because I sat on it, and it is incredibly, obnoxiously, crazy loud. The Praga diesel is one of the most insane things I've heard. especially coming from such a small vehicle, right? You'd expect it to be nimble. No, it is not. So compared to the StuG, it's actually quite different. You'd expect the headset to be more nimble, but the engine is obnoxiously loud. It's pretty cool though. Let's see. See here, we have 40 mils of pen. We can actually punch through a T-35 frontally with HE. As you can see, 245. It's just something that players will have to be educated on and that they will learn, right? And it's going to change balancing dynamics quite a lot for a lot of these vehicles, because suddenly your high HP pool may mean less because people can pen you with HE, right? So I'm really excited to just see all of that happen in the game. A little unlucky with landing the shots on there. We also revised ricochet mechanics, so now it's more consistent. Shot traps are actually much easier to land. As you could see there, before we bounced stuff and the shot landed in the driver's area there, but obviously it didn't do that much at that angle. Yeah, they won't see it coming, but they will hear it. Well, as long as the engine is running, right? It's only really bad when you actually move it, right? When you put your foot on the throttle. This is offline version. I have to check if it downloads the Armative launcher. Then yeah, I don't think the offline demo already has the launcher. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask. If the download is like 3 seconds, 1 second, I'll actually have a look. You know, it's not going to take long anyways. Let me have a quick look. We'll also put up some updates about the Kickstarter campaign soon. The download, yeah, okay. The download has been replaced with the launcher, so you actually get the launcher already byteless. So you don't have to manually unzip anything. You just get the launcher, you select the install location that you want, and you can install it wherever you want. So no worries. Yep, exactly. Thank you, Hunty. Yes, you can delete the old version, the demo version 2. It's outdated at this point, right? I suggest just getting rid of it, and moving forward, all of the offline demos will be handled through the launcher. Alright, that being said, I think we're gonna wrap up for today. I think I took around 45 minutes longer than I wanted, but things happen. Thank you very much for being here, guys. Thank you very much for all the positive feedback, all the questions and the engagement. It really helps us keep going. And I will see you guys soon on the battlefield, hopefully. 20th of December, save the date.